a glad heart, but when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gate, that he stood not up, nor moved before him, he was full of indignation against Mordecai. Friend, listen. He is so simple that he cannot get past what one man thinks about him. If you can ever mature to the point to where you don't care what someone thinks about you, it will really help you out a lot. Someone else's foolish behavior does not dictate nor influence my own personal behavior. Haman is acting ridiculous. He is really acting ridiculous because he has all this power, he has all this privilege, he is meeting, but he's glad and joyful, but he has no idea why he's coming to a banquet, but yet he knows he's going to go back, but he doesn't have the discernment to say, something's not right. And he gets mad at Mordecai not bowing down to him. Now, let me say this. If you want to be dominated by what other people think about you, you're going to be miserable. You know that, right? It doesn't matter what other people think about you. It does not matter whether they give you 1,000 likes on this photo or 1,000 likes. That stuff doesn't matter, right? So what we've done is we've set up in our society a system of affirmation. We constantly need affirmation. If you're not constantly patted on the back, you're having a bad day. If somebody doesn't hit like, look, do you understand that the people that are sending stuff or validating you on social media, that they're concerned whether somebody likes their stuff? They don't care about you, man. The more you realize, here's what somebody told me, and you can get offended or whatever you want to because I'm just talking to you just very briefly. I had a friend of mine tell me, he said, let me tell you something. He said, you better serve God, and you better serve God because you're going to serve God alone. And I'm not saying anything. He said, but when a preacher dies, he said, let me tell you what, that church is going to cry for about a week and they're going to move on. That's the truth. Because they've got to move on, but that's about the level of appreciation a lot of times that there is. Haman is so consumed by Mordecai that he can't get over it. Does it even make reasonable sense? Okay, then our allowing other people to dictate our behavior is as ridiculous as Haman's. That's right. Mordecai had just cause to stand up. And some people don't have any cause to respond to you in a foolish manner. So look. Some people have no reasonable reason to respond to you in a foolish manner. Is that correct? They're mean to you. They say something to you. They have no reason nor right to do that whatsoever. And some people are dead set in their own wickedness to cause other people harm. What they want to do is what Haman wanted to do. And Haman is an evil, evil man. I want to show you verse 10 because I've got to hurry up. Verse 10. Nevertheless, Haman refrained himself from putting his hand against Mordecai because Mordecai standing up, he could have called his servants and said, knock that guy down on the ground, right? He could have done that, but he didn't do that. This, forgive me, I'm not using a non-biblical word. This idiot exercises some kind of restraint. And his restraint is not doing something. What he could have done was enact violence against Mordecai, and he would have been cleared because there wouldn't have been no problem because that's what the law said for him to do. Now, notice what it says in verse 10. So you have his restraint, but in verse 11 in verse 10 and 11 you have something very strange. Nevertheless, Haman refrained himself and went and came home and sent and called for his friends and Zeresh his wife. And Haman told them of the glory of his riches and the multitude of his children and all the things wherein the king had promoted him and how he had advanced him above the princes and the servants of the king. I want to say this. His brag fest, could you imagine? Okay, let me tell you the difference between a Christian and a non-Christian. A Christian, a person that's been saved and they've received Jesus Christ as their personal Savior. Do you know that if not if you hit the lottery, but if you had $1 million or you inherited $1 million, they are happy for you, right? I mean, if you get a new, let's say a new four-wheeler, they're not looking at that thing with envy and wanting to key it. They're rejoicing on the fact that you have it and rejoicing on the fact that they don't have to pay for it. Yeah. So with that being said, there's true rejoicing that can go on. But Haman is an ogre. Haman is a very wicked, vile man. And can you imagine being called to his banquet? To where you're called to his house and he brags on his riches? I don't really care, Haman. And then what's he do? He brags on what his children. We all brag on our children, even though you might not like them and you this, that, word. It don't make any difference. They're yours, right? I'm not saying you don't like your kids. I'm saying somebody else don't like your kids. And get that straight. So he brags on his riches, his children, his promotion, and advancement above other people. There's a lot more I could give you in verse 12, verse 13, but I want you to look at verse 13. Verse 12, let me say this. It's all about me. Verse 12, Haman said moreover, yea, Esther the queen did not let no man come in with the king into the banquet that she had prepared for, but myself, and tomorrow I am invited unto her also with the king. Verse 13, yet all his servants availeth me nothing yet all this availeth me nothing so long as I see Mordecai the Jew sitting at the king's gate. And actually he would stand it up. Verse 14, then said, this is the worst advice he could ever get from anybody. Verse 14, then said Zeresh his wife and all his friends unto him. So his wife and all of his friends, let a gallows be made of 50 cubits high, and tomorrow speak thou unto the king that Mordecai may be hanged thereon. Then go thou in merrily with the king unto the banquet. And the thing pleased Haman, and he caused the gallows to be made. I want to tell you something. This sulking, how long will you sulk? He is literally sulking. He is saying, none of this avails me. All my riches, all my children, it does me no good as long as I see Mordecai out there at the king's gate. And ultimately what he was doing was standing up and rebelling against the king's law. This joker, he received the absolute worst advice that he could ever receive. Build a gallows 75 feet high. Now, have you ever seen the Middle East? It's normally 1 or 2 story buildings, right? You've seen the pictures? Do you know how many stories 75 feet is? Anybody know? It's 5 stories high. So approximately 5 stories high. Now, how high do you think you could see that in the city? You could see that everywhere. And he had these gallows built that were 5 stories high to do what? To murder someone because of his pride. But he sulked. I'm going to give you this, and really I'm concerned about the time, but let me say this. In 1 Kings, you have Ahab sulking over what he couldn't have. He turned to the wall, sulking. He couldn't have Naboth's vineyard. Jezebel comes in and tells him, what's your problem? And he says, well, Naboth, he won't give me his vineyard. So she sets up and has Naboth murdered. But it was immediate confrontation by the man of God, because God told Elijah, you go down there and you confront that joker. Don't tell me that politics and religion don't mix. What you need to do is read the Bible, because the men of God, all the way through the Bible, confronted politicians about their wickedness. That's right. And what you see with this immediate confrontation is judgment is advanced against him. But the absolute worst advice he could have ever received was at the hands of his wife and his friends. I'm going to say this and we're done. It is evil, and this is application. This is not Haman. Look at me. Mistreating one another is very wicked and very vile. And for you to build the gallows to hang someone else on is a wicked, vile thing. When you check the Bible, you will find that if you dig a pit, you're going to fall in it. If you roll a rock up a hill, it's going to roll back down on you. I mean, that's just a principle of sowing and reaping. So whatever you're reaping, you better get ready to sow it. When it's all because of the perverted pride of Haman, our envy, things that we can control, we need to have restraint. Not like him, but we need to have Holy Ghost restraint in the fact that we realize, look, that's outside my control, or this isn't in my control. But when it comes to the stand of other people, we need to have respect for their stand, but we also need to stand when it's time to stand. Mordecai had the attitude, I'd rather die on my feet, a free man, than slave on my knees as a slave. So when you look at that attitude that he had, it was the right position. Now what had happened, because we're going to go over this next time. Look now. Mordecai, what did he do? He saved the king's life. He had saved the king's life, but he was never rewarded for it. Haman plotted to murder an entire group of people, and he was not facing punishment for it. But the wisdom of Esther, you come tomorrow, and I will tell you, I will do what you said to do. Chapter 6, verse 1. On that night could not the king sleep, and he commanded to bring the book of the records of the Chronicles, and they were read before the king. You know what? The Bible does not say why he could not sleep. But I wonder if you have such a relationship with your wife that if she told you, hey, you come tomorrow, I have a request, but you come tomorrow to a meal I'm going to prepare for you, I'll tell it to you. Could you sleep? I'm not saying that's why Ahasuerus didn't sleep. I'm saying that's a good suggestion. But we know that God stirred his sleep because there was a purpose and a reason what he was doing. What do we get out of this? Do not be evil. Do not be wicked. Do not plot other people's demise. And we need to be godly Christian people that love one another as the Bible's commanded us to do so. Every head bowed, every eye closed.